Anyone pick up on a commonality between our two passages this week? Is it obvious enough? Did you hear a same kind of theme with Moses and Joshua and Jesus and John? We have people who are prophesying or speaking or healing or casting out demons in a place where they aren't necessarily supposed to. And in our two texts today, I think we see the grace and power of the Spirit being poured out on humanity, don't we? We see healing happening and we see proclamation happening. Amazing things are happening in the power of the Spirit in both of our readings today. And I think, unfortunately, in our readings, we also see another phenomenon, don't we? What is the response of John? And what is the response of Joshua? Joshua goes to Moses and John goes to Jesus, and they both essentially say, people are doing these things in your power, Lord, but they're not doing them where or how they should. We must stop them. And I think it's perhaps a sad reality that humanity likes to create rules and borders around the Spirit's power. I think we do that sometimes. We do that with each other, maybe without even noticing or realizing what we're doing, and we see somebody who's doing something differently than the way that we think it ought to be done, and surely we have this instinct to maybe put a stop to it. But I think also in the text today we see the explosiveness of the Spirit's power, don't we? We see that God's Spirit isn't to be bound in by borders or rule keeping, but that the Spirit is pouring out its power on those who are even outside of the place that's designated. This reminded me of a little anecdote. My head is full of movie quotes and movie references. This reminded me, anyone watch Jurassic Park? Okay, a few. Do you remember Jeff Goldblum's character? Dr. Ian McDonald has this famous quote from Jurassic Park where he says, John, speaking to the park director, John, and maybe he could be speaking to John the Apostle in our gospel reading. John, the kind of control you're attempting simply is, it's not possible. Life will not be contained. Life breaks free. It expands to new territories and crashes through barriers painfully, maybe even dangerously. But, well, there it is. I'm simply saying that life finds a way. And I propose that perhaps that this is true of the Spirit, because isn't the gospel about life? Aren't we granted life? And isn't it true in our lives and in Scripture we see the truth that the Spirit finds a way? Life finds a way. But it is a sad reality that we have to face in ourselves, that often we withhold what we are freely given by grace. We receive grace and we receive forgiveness and we receive the love of God. And I guess I have to ask, can I share that one of the most perplexing realities for me as a pastor, as a person, as a follower of Jesus, is how we tend to withhold what we have been given freely. And that we build walls and regulations around the gift of grace that we never earned ourselves. Perhaps forgetting that when we were given grace, we were probably enemies of God ourselves. I don't know about you, but I was certainly out of the faith when I encountered the grace of Christ. And I suspect, as I studied psychology and theology and what's going on in the world around us, I suspect that this comes to us as a spawn that comes out of a fear of scarcity. That even though we live in a prosperous country, that we are afraid of scarcity, that there are limits to God's love, that there are limits to His forgiveness and His patience. Rather than springing forth from the spirit of abundance. And so as a result of that fear of scarcity, we impose limits on what is truly limitless. limitless grace, limitless love. And I personally find the parable of the unforgiving servant, no time to read it today, but would encourage you to review it from time to time. It compels me to be sure the parable of the unforgiving servant is a compelling warning to us all, having been given grace and forgiveness, that we not withhold it from one another. But as Dr. Malcolm said in that famous movie, Jurassic Park, life cannot be contained. Grace cannot and will not be contained. One of my favorite pastors, Nadia Boltz-Weber, recounts something. There was a time at which she was feeling pretty restrictive towards people that she thought might be a little bit not intelligent or not handling the Christian life well. And her friend, her dear friend, Matthew, said to her and reminded her of this, quote, "Nadia, the thing that sucks is that every time we draw a line between us and others, Jesus is always on the other side of that line. When we draw a line between us and them, when we draw a line between the worthy and the unworthy, we always find that Jesus is standing on the other side of the line." Similarly, I have heard it well said that the scandal of the gospel is who it includes, not who it excludes. The amazing life promised in the gospel comes to us from a God who is loving beyond our own understanding and comprehension. And his grace and love are more inclusive than we could ever imagine. Jesus himself says in our gospel text today, does he not? Jesus says this, "Do not stop him. For no one who does a deed of power in my name will be able soon afterward to speak evil of me. Whoever is not against us is for us." I think we usually get that the other way around, don't we? We usually think whoever is not for us must be against us. But Jesus says whoever is not against us is for us. "For truly I tell you, whoever gives you a cup of water to drink because you bear the name of Christ will by no means lose the reward." So if we do church differently, if we interpret Scripture differently, if we do community life differently, if we do preschool differently, if we do fellowship activities differently, we have the grace to love one another and realize that we're all on the same team, that we're all working toward the same goal, that we're all following the grace of Christ and responding to that grace as best we can. So how do we experience this gospel? To put the tires on the road, the rubber to the road, as you would, how do we experience a gospel like this? Well, we experience liberty. You see, with a grace like that, we are liberated from gatekeeping. We don't have to do gatekeeping. We are liberated from deciding who's good enough and who isn't. We're liberated from all forms of judging one another. I don't know about you, but I'm grateful for that. Not an exercise I like to participate in. Another way that we can experience this gospel is through faith. We can rely on the exercise of faith in a merciful God who loves all of us, even when we might not understand how that can be. I think Fran said it well earlier, that we have an opportunity in these readings in the gospel grace that we receive to exercise a trust in God. That the same grace that met us and liberated us meets others and liberates them as well. We can experience this gospel through peace. We sing of peace every week, and we share the peace of Christ with one another every week, and we can live in peace together, exercising all those aspects of love You remember the aspects of love that we talked about just last week? How love is patient. Love has patience and kindness. It is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. Love is not insisting on our own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It is not keeping a tally of wrongdoing, but rejoicing in the truth, bearing all things, believing all things, hoping and enduring all things. This is good news for us today. We need some good news in this world, don't we? The good news for us today is that today's text should free us from the fear of scarcity and inspire our hearts with the awe of abundance in the grace, love, and power of God. The good news is that we get to put down our gatekeeping nature, and instead we trust that God is at work in and through each other, even if we ourselves cannot understand how that's happening. The good news for us today is that we have the privilege of helping to build the present and future kingdom. To be construction workers, if you will, who build alongside each other with grace. The same grace that we receive. And finally, the good news for us today, having gathered here together, having been renewed on that grace as a gift from God to each and every one of us, to each of us all together, we can truly extend that grace. The grace of putting the best construction on all we hear and see and say about each other as we journey together, as we labor together as construction workers building a kingdom of love and grace here in Greenville, here at First Congregational Church. May it be true for all of us. In Jesus' name, amen.